Guys, thank you very much for coming to this parent seminar, which is very important for us to help educate you guys. Thank you for bringing your children here to this event. How many people are returning versus first time? So first timers are returning, okay, and first timers, majority, right? Okay, which is pretty typical. You know, the whole opportunity that we want to give your child here at the Exposure Camp is give them access to college coaches and have a unique opportunity to be on court with them and to be able to interact with them and learn about what it's going to be like to be a college tennis player, the types of drills and intensity that they go through with their teams, understand the different levels and divisions that college tennis has, academically, athletically, and just have a really fun experience playing matches and improving their game and developing at the same time one day, depending on what grade your child's in, to get an opportunity to get recruited by either one of these schools here or one of the schools in the entire college network. Every coach here knows at least 100 other coaches. I know every college coach because I do it on a daily basis and with my team. So this is a really unique experience for everybody. And I think that, you know, over the years, I've been doing this now 6 years here at Penn with Coach David Getz and the rest of the college coaches. We've really built a really, really good team of college coaches that are willing to give back and help every player, no matter if they're a good level for their specific team or not. And they're willing to help, you know, get you connected and teach you what you need to learn and really give you that advice, okay, that everyone's looking for. And that's super important. So, you know, at the end of the weekend, your child should come out of this really feeling like they've learned something, they understand a little bit more about college tennis and what it's about, connected with some really great coaches, and made a lot of new friends and had great competition. That's what you're getting out of this. And players over the years, I mean, the reason why this is successful, why it continues to run, why we continue to sell out these camps is because it works. And myself, like, I started doing this because I realized that there was a need for this, that the NCAA rules don't always allow for college coaches to interact with players other than these unique settings. And time doesn't permit, most importantly. You know, even if it was allowed in every type of setting, time doesn't permit. Because coaches are busy, players are busy playing tournaments. This is an individual sport. People are not available to come to you, or you're not able, individuals can't come to your university and train with them and spend time with them. So this is an opportunity, unlike any other. So I wanted to explain that to you guys because I know that this goes right into the recruiting of the big question, you know, how do I get my son or daughter into the college of their dreams that they want to, that would be a great fit? Like, how do I actually do that? How do I navigate that? And that is the problem. That is the confusion. That is the solution that I'm always giving to families day in, day out. That is what your mandate is. You know, some people want to be pro, but college is a great route now to get to the pros. A lot and most want to use their sport as a great way to get into a school and have that really cool experience of being a student athlete and playing on that team, being the best athlete and student they can be, and getting a great education. That's ultimately what everybody is trying to do. So how do you best do that? How do you give your son or daughter a competitive edge? And, you know, I'll give you guys a quick background about myself before I get started. You know, I was born and raised in Canada in a town called Kingston, in between Toronto and Montreal. Tennis was not the most popular sport. I started off playing ice hockey. I did everything else before I started tennis: baseball, soccer, ice hockey, basketball, you name it. But my father was born in India, a lot of British influence. Cricket was obviously a big sport, but tennis was important. And he always wanted his kids to play tennis. First generation immigrant. And he thought, okay, it'd be great just to expose my kids to everything. And I love tennis, so let me do it. I started playing tennis at 8. I liked it. It was once a week type thing. At 12, I continued. And there was an indoor club. My family moved downtown in my hometown, and there was an outdoor, club that, you know, kids would hang out there all summer long and play. And I became one of those tennis, you know, kids that would just hang out at the club all the time, and I would play. And through the friends I made and the coaches that I met there, I started to fall in love with it, and I realized this is something I could do at a higher level. So I came to the US and I didn't know what to expect. I mean, I have a lot of family in the States. We're in Canada. It's not that far away. You travel a lot. But, you know, college and universities are very different at home. My sisters, two older sisters went to school, but there's not the same sports feel. So I came with, you know, my set of challenges. And as a result, I went to one school, Western New Mexico, D2. I did really well. I transferred to a D1 for many reasons. I finished off at Jacksonville University. And whether it's Division 1, 2, 3, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. The point was I found my best fits along the process. I got my master's. I worked for the Orlando Magic. I worked for Cliff Drysdale Tennis. And then I started doing business with my father in real estate. And then I found myself in the recruiting space, which is really my passion. I love sports, every sport. I wish I could play sports all day long. I follow it. I want to be involved in it. And this is something that I realized in college, that as I was going through it myself and as I watched all the other kids go through it, I thought, you know, all these kids are coming and so many are going to the wrong places, or they don't have the right information, and it hasn't been done right. Like, how can we actually get a great experience? At the end of it, I had a really good experience. I had an experience that I never wanted to leave. I've experienced that I would do it all over again the same way, because I think some of the challenges that I went through have taught me to become a better person, have taught me to become much stronger. And I think that everybody's going to go through their own set of challenges. There's no perfect job, there's no perfect school, there's no perfect life. But can you position yourself to get the best out of what you're looking for? Take advantage of that. And so when I started this business about 10 years ago, I was new in it, and you use my connections with former teammates and friends in college tennis that are now coaches. I use my connections, you know, with other people that I knew, and I started along and started figuring out. You know, now fast forward where I am today, you know, I'm running a really successful recruiting business, a really successful exposure camps business. We're at Harvard, Yale, Penn, UC Santa Barbara. We have a really big showcase that has 100+ college coaches that come every year to Boca in Florida. I help players all around the world. I speak all around the world. I have an opportunity to educate and motivate players, which is my passion, because I'd love for kids to have an even better experience than me, to have in some way the same feeling I have when I got out of school, to say this was the coolest thing ever. This is why I am who I am. And I think athletes share that. You know, when you go through and you're a competitive athlete and you spend so many years in dedicating your life and sacrifices, and you get to the college level, that is your Super Bowl. That is your chance to really be the best you can be and enjoy an awesome academic experience, sports experience, and then a social experience, and make friends for life and have memories forever. I mean, that's what it's all about. And what you learn out of that, I don't think compares to just the regular student. I think you get so much more. So, you know, with all this knowledge that I've gained and all these people that I've met and all these coaches that I've networked with, I've realized one really important thing, and it's gotten more and more difficult, is there's so much confusion in the process. Where do I start? What do I do? How does it work? What's UTR? What is tennis recruiting? Are they the same thing? What do coaches look for? What types of schools, you know, can I get into? What grades do they need? You know, how much scholarship can I get? Is there financial aid? I mean, there's 1,000,001 questions, which I understand, but the more that people are discussing with each other, the more different answers they're getting, because everybody's situation is completely unique. So the first thing that everybody here, I hope, if there's anything you guys are going to take away, if it's just one thing, it's don't listen to the noise around you. Don't listen to everybody who wants to share their 2 cents, because their situation or the way they helped a kid get recruited or whatever is completely unique to your situation. No two people are alike. No two people's situation is like 100%. Yes, you may have a similar level to somebody. You may have a certain financial situation that's the same, or academics, but no two people's needs and wants and situation and the coach's situation is going to be the same. So everybody's quite confused in that process. So I want to help you guys understand what you need to do, simplify it, And then how can you apply it and be successful? How can you actually navigate this process successfully without running into too many obstacles and without sort of going in circles and having too many headaches and actually reaching the goal that you want to get to? So the number one thing I want to start with is get educated. And when I say get educated, I mean understand the overall statistics and dynamics around college tennis specifically, and just understanding the landscape of how it works. Something your children are doing this weekend, which is, how do these teams train? How many players are there? What do the coaches expect? What is it like to be in a team now? And how do those matches work? And what actually happens? That's very important, to understand college tennis. How many people here have been to a college tennis match? Throw your hands up. Okay, good. And have you guys taken your kids to those matches? Okay. And there's about a quarter, maybe even half, if at most, that have. If you haven't, do that. And go to multiple, because no two teams are the same. Some cheer really loud, some don't. But you're going to notice a bunch of things. And I'll give you a couple examples. You're going to notice it's a team sport, and it's out of a certain number of points, and it's about the team winning, not just the individual. Yes, you have to individually win your matches, but overall the team wins or loses. And sometimes, depending on the situation, certain matches don't finish. If your team's already won and they got to go somewhere else, or another team's coming in, or whatever the situation is, you're not finishing those matches. So you might say, I don't get to finish my match? That's absurd, right? Because in junior tennis, imagine you don't finish your match. But that's part of being on the team. If you're the last person and your team's won or lost, you may not finish that match. You may be in a situation where you only play doubles and not singles, or vice versa. You're on the bench, or you're not playing at all, or you're a red shirt, and you have to cheer on your other teammates. You're not just doing your match and going off. You're not just warming up on your own. You don't have an individual coach just for you. These are some of the things you're going to start to see and learn about. And you can see the level of play too, how much bigger, stronger these men and women are. They could be 4 years older than you. So they could have a lot more experience. They could have a lot more developed. But how do you compete? How does a freshman compete with a junior and senior? How do they handle that? What is the coach's role? Are they meant to be on your court all the time? You have to be self-sufficient. Are there other teammates helping you out? Do they have one coach, two coaches, multiple coaches? You'll notice a lot of teams might only have one coach. Some will have a head and an assistant. Some coach might be handling both teams, and they have both matches playing back to back. So these dynamics you're going to start to learn. This is getting educated. There's two ways to get educated, right? You can do it in theory, you can do it in paper, you can read, Google, go on websites, different places, and then there's actual practical knowledge. And I think everybody in this room, the parents will know that, learning something in school or in theory, and if you're especially a tradesperson in work, doing it actually, getting your hands dirty is a totally different experience, and learning experience especially. So that's really, really important to understand. A couple things to take away from the education is don't emphasize too much on the statistics. Let me give you guys an example. So in men's Division I tennis, there's 4.5 scholarships available, okay, if you're a fully funded school. Now, first, some of you guys might already be a little bit confused. So let me explain completely. Not every school in Division I men's tennis is fully funded. Some are, some aren't. So there's a maximum of 4.5 scholarships that they can divide amongst their players. Some schools might have 3, 3.2, 4, 1, 0. So let's just say you learn some of those statistics and you see which schools have that and you research that online. What does that really mean to you? Okay, there's funding over there, but it's not really solving your problem, because if you're looking for a scholarship, and a large one at most, then you have to know how much money is available for your specific year from that school, and if that coach is willing to give you some money and how much, and that's all you really need to know, right? So you got to take some of these with a grain of salt. Some of these statistics people get too caught up in. They're like, oh, but this school has 4.5. My son can get a real big scholarship there. Well, first of all, is your son worthy of that big scholarship? Secondly, is it available? Does that coach want to give it? Does he have the results to get there? So statistics are important, but they're also, need a lot more research. But understanding as much as you can and getting a general idea is what's really going to help you. Understanding the basics is what can help you navigate the process successfully. So the basics and knowing that there's money available versus not. Let me give you another example. In D1 women's tennis, if you're fully funded, it's a head count sport and it's 8 full rides. What that means is that every girl on the team has to be given a full scholarship. But if we think deeply into that, we could say, all right, well, that also requires a much more rigorous process on the coach's side and way more competitive because every girl would love to have a full ride. And the coach knows that and says, wait, I got to select the right people. I got to select the right coaches. The right players. And that's very important. But there are multiple ways and avenues that I'm going to help you guys and give you an email about that can give you some tools and places where you can go and get educated. I started recently documenting a lot of what I do in the recruiting space on a daily basis. Everything from what I personally do in my life, helping student athletes and what my team does, to being at these type of events, to just doing some YouTube shows where I bring in college coaches and other industry experts to discuss college sports and development and recruiting and just giving you guys as much free content as possible so you can start to get educated, motivated, understand more about what everything's about. And I think that there's a lack of that. And so I'm really trying to help you guys, but there are a handful of places where you can go and receive information and study that. And I really suggest that you spend time doing that with your child, Nothing wrong with taking an hour, half an hour out of your week or every couple weeks or once a month and sitting down in front of the laptop and just checking some stuff out, doing some research, reading some articles. Right? There's nothing wrong with doing that and getting started, especially if you're a little bit younger. Obviously, if you get into junior and senior year, it's accelerated. So that's super important. I want to talk a little bit about UTR and tennisrecruiting.net because that's a big topic. Everybody's talking about UTR and, I need this number, I won't get into college. It's all about the number. It's all about playing the certain matches. This talk that I want to have with you guys is also some honesty and some insider information because I think that we need to be transparent. That's also why I'm documenting a lot and I have a camera run around with me and I try to take a lot of footage because I want to show you guys what it's really like. And the truth is that UTR is not the end-all be-all. This number is a number that's been computed based on an algorithm, just like tennisrecruiting.net, that have a star rating, that give you an idea, on the most part, of the gauge of somebody's level. I'll give you guys an example. I was just outside like an hour ago talking with a couple of coaches that were stopping by, a couple of my buddies, and we had this conversation, and it's like he brought up, in Spain, UTR doesn't really work. And it's like, yeah, we know that. So it's not even like really a conversation between us. And he's like, yeah, this mother was trying to explain to me and all panicky because, they didn't think their daughter would be able to get recruited because, they don't have the perfect UTR. At the same time, do the pros look at UTR? It's like, no. One of the reasons why UTR is popular is because we don't play in junior tennis in one league. Okay, so we don't play in the NFL or the NBA or the ATP or WTA tour where everybody has to play and move up and then the top of the top get up there. Like, is anybody going to argue that Djokovic is number one in the world or, Nadal and Federer and Djokovic are top 3? No, because they've got the best results this year or over the last year and they've defended their points. Or in the women's circuit, whoever's top right now or top 10. Like it is what it is, right? It's the results that put it there. The problem with junior tennis is we're not all playing in that same arena with the same opportunities. Some families can travel to ITFs and go to the Caribbean and other places and some can't. Some people can play USTA tournaments, make it to nationals, and some people can't. Part of it financially, part of it timing. There's a number of things that can happen. But what UTR, for example, in tennis recruiting, if you're in America, has done, and UTR probably one step further, because tennis is an international game. It's played by everybody around the world. We have a lot of internationals in college tennis because it is an international sport. And we're taking the best of the best. The coaches need the best of the best. It's competitive. And because of that, UTR has a little bit more weight, generally, for other kids outside of America, because how else can we get an idea where their level is? Now, the other problem that college tennis has is that we don't have resources, right? So like, if you're football and basketball, it doesn't matter if you're in Latvia or Australia or Thailand, like coaches will be able to scout you. They even have, most of those teams have an actual scout that goes and does that as their job, or multiple scouts, and a huge team of people and resources and statistics. We don't have that in college tennis. We have even part-time coaches. We have coaches that do this because they love it, not because they're getting paid a lot for it. We have coaches that have limited, not only resources, but sometimes skills and knowledge then, or ability to go out. So they're relying on videos and being able to see them live in larger settings. Well, that's why showcases, exposure camps, combines, these are very popular in smaller sports, because coaches need a place where they can go see 100 or so players, or however many, a lot of players, and players also need to see a lot of coaches at one time with the dynamic. So UTR has value in the sense that it's created an algorithm that can give coaches an starting point. But where they don't give you value for the coaches or the players is this school a fit for me? Do I have the academics? Do I have the grades to get in there? Is it got my major? Are they recruiting players this year? What level? Who? It's giving you a number, if it is accurate, or if it isn't, that's another topic, but if it is, then what about the rest of it? And so we're putting a lot of emphasis on a number, and so if we took away UTR, so I wrote a little Facebook post the other day, and I said, do the pros use UTR? No, and I explained some of the stuff I did now. And I said, what if we took away UTR and we just put it in the corner and we didn't know what it was, and we just go out and develop our game? So we do what everyone's been doing for forever since tennis started, right? When there was no UTR. When I was growing up, there was no UTR. So I go out and my coach is saying, all right, let's work on some stuff. Let's get better. And you start seeing the results. Not only do you feel like you're seeing the results because whatever drills you're working on stuff are improving and you're getting more results out of them, but then you put it into play and you're getting further in tournaments. You're beating players that you normally didn't. The game is improving. And then results are getting better. And then all of a sudden, we look at UTR 6 months later versus what that number was, and those results were there. It's usually going to be somewhat of a reflection on that. All it's taking is your wins, losses, your competitiveness, and just putting it into perspective. But people are trying to game the system. It's like, how can I do it? Maybe if I play this tournament or I do that and whatever. Look, if coaches have limited resources, but they're gotten a lot smarter because they have a lot of online resources, they have access, and they do understand how the system works. And they do see your results. I was talking to somebody last week and I said, before UTR came in, and even when tennis recruiting was the sole sort of network out there that had a rating system for college tennis prospects, I said, I was at the Orange Bowl, and I had a player who was a very good player from Florida, and I was walking around and I went to a couple coaches, and the Wake Forest coach especially, who he wanted to go play for, and I said, hey, have you heard of this kid? And the kid was a little bit under the radar, but had a great national showing just a few weeks before that, or a few months before that, sorry. And he said no. So first thing he did was he looked him up and he went on tennisrecruiting.net because he knows he can get results on there from all the tournaments that he's played, because that's the data that they show you. And he didn't even look at the rating. He just flipped right at the bottom and he went and he said, oh, he played this kid? I know him. Oh, he played this kid? I know him. Oh, he played this kid? I know him. Oh, this guy looks pretty good. Oh, he beat this guy? Coaches know the players that they're looking at, right? And they know the other players as well. And if you're playing those similar caliber players that they may have seen and realize that player's at level, and you're having close matches or you're beating them stuff, that becomes interesting to them. Not so much the number then. They'll go beyond that rating number. one of the reasons why UTR became such a popular thing and so much pressure on you guys is, in some way, they've done that for their reasons. They've got a college coach who behind them who got other college coaches saying, hey, this is something that could help you guys, and everybody jumped on, which was great. And then they took it and then they just marketed it. And really what it did create, I guess not meaningfully, but it created this whole sense of urgency, this problem. I don't want to play kids lower than me. I don't want to play kids higher than me. And anytime you listen to pros, I have an opportunity all the time during the Miami Open, because I live in Miami full time, and I have some friends in the network that coach pro players or are around those guys and girls. And whenever I'm hanging out with those pro coaches and pro players, it's like, I wish the kids would just go out and play and not worry about who they're playing. One of my kids that I helped through the process was Federer's hitting partner this past year at the Miami Open. And this is for the quarters and semis. Roger Federer was playing with one of my clients, former clients that I helped, who's going to college, who's not one of the top guys. He's good, but he's not one of the top guys in the country or world. He's not going to be a pro. And he's his training partner to prepare for his quarters and semis match. Players need to go out there and just play. It's not about, it's going to happen. If you are playing and you're playing at the local level USTA tournaments or whatever, and you're winning those, then you're getting the rankings and the points and stuff to move to the next ones, and you're getting into those draws. And you move up and you move up and you move up. There are very unique cases that happen where players that doesn't happen, right? And then, you got to find those solutions every once in a while. But for the most part, if you're developing your game and you're winning matches and you're improving, then you're moving up to the rankings. How do you get into the nationals, for example, here? You've got to have a certain ranking, you got to win certain matches and tournaments, and then you get that opportunity. And then the ratings and rankings all speak for themselves. What we should be focusing on is development on that point. And I always felt like recruiting was, okay, I'll just do the recruiting process, I'll consult you, and there are steps in the recruiting process. But I think the recruiting's a much bigger picture because it starts with your development. On you getting to the level that you need to be, or close enough to then help you through that process and give you that competitive edge, to get you seen in front of those coaches and to manage all the paperwork and all the communication and negotiations and everything and early decision process, depending on which division you're going, to get you through those steps. So I realize it's development a lot. We are not focusing enough on starting early and saying, okay, my plan is to get here. Whether it's when people say, well, I want to be in a 10 UTR by this time. Okay, what does that actually mean? It means I want to improve my game a certain level amount, and I want to win certain matches that will get me that opportunity, because that rating will just do its work. It's a statistic that comes out along with others, and with a grain of salt again, because it's a number that may or may not be perfectly accurate, depending on your situation. So how can I develop my game at that age? Well, I think the challenge that I've seen is that most families and parents, I feel like it's really your responsibility to ensure that your child goes to a program and a coach that can help them reach their goals, short and long-term goals. What are we going to do over the next 3 months, 6 months, 1 year to help us get to the next level? And what are those measuring points? What are the results that we're looking for that are going to determine whether we met our goal or not? And it's not that complicated. It's, you've got to find a competent person and people or team, and you've got to also work hard yourself and be dedicated and do all the right things in order to try to reach those goals. And you've got to evaluate. How many people evaluate every quarter how they're doing in their tennis development? Honestly. Put up your hand, please. Okay, nobody. See? That's the problem. When the people come to me in grade 10, 11, 12, sophomore, junior, seniors, nobody's done that. And they're expecting to go to certain schools. First, because they don't have the knowledge of what those schools require in terms of level academically, athletically, and then it's like, well, your behavior hasn't mapped to be that level. Has your child been doing X, Y, and Z? Because those players that are at those schools are doing those things. And then sometimes I'll get parents that say, oh, but you know, my son or daughter is doing a really tough school program. They don't have time for that. There's kids out there that do both. There's situations that happen. You know, I'll give you guys another little taste of reality. If you are homeschooled, for example, which, to be honest, I'm not the hugest fan of. I think it takes a specific individual to be able to be homeschooled, discipline and maturity and stuff. But let's just say you're homeschooled versus you go to one of the top prep schools in the Northeast. And you're homeschooled and your tennis level is 5-star level. And you get good grades in homeschool. And you go to this prep school that's really demanding, doesn't allow you to play the tennis, even if you could be a 5-star, but it doesn't allow you. And the school is so rigorous, and that you get the same grades as the homeschool, but your argument is that the homeschool is not as tough as my school. Well, the reality is 99.9% of the colleges don't care, including this one right here. Because I've had a girl come here a couple years ago who was homeschooled, who did get in over another girl who went to that type of school, but had the better level. So then you start saying, well, what do I do? Well, that's the education. That's the early education. People start the process way too late because the process on recruiting is not just doing that work, as I mentioned, the paperwork and the communication, all that. It starts way before that. The process starts with the development to get to that stage. And so we are forgetting about some of those things, and we're not putting enough, I wouldn't say weight necessarily, but understanding towards it. We don't want to understand that. And I can understand why you don't want to. I mean, you want to send, if you want to send your child because they're a very good student to a top school and you feel like you can financially, afford it, or you can give them that opportunity. But if it's a lack of the tennis, then you just have to understand that that is what it is. And this is where you might end up versus if you do this route. And then you make those decisions. And sadly, you have to sometimes make those decisions very early on, and there's chances that are taken. That's the thing about sports that's really cool and different, is there's an element of emotion, and then there's an element of rationality and just statistics. So it's like, not everybody can be the best player in the world, but everyone's striving to be the best. Everybody thinks their child is the best. I know that now. I understand it now. My dad used to tell me, everybody thinks their kid's the best player in the world. Now I have a 2.5-year-old son. He kicks a soccer ball, and I think he's the best soccer player in the world. He's going to be the next Ronaldo. But it's not true. And then I watch the other kids, and I'm like, okay, wait. We're a little bit blindsided. We have tunnel vision when it comes to that because they're your children, and you see them in a different light than someone else. And really, the end goal is that the coach has to like you. Not every coach is going to have this right chemistry with you that needs a player like you. Vice versa, you may not get along or be the right fit for that school. So it's interesting because school has so much emphasis, right? And academics is so important, yet there's an element of sports. So it's not like you're a pro player and you get drafted to the Chicago Bulls basketball team and it's like, all right, I'll go play for Chicago. I mean, some people in tennis, the schools that might like you may not like them academically. It's a bit of a tug of war there because and that's where you have to find the right fit, because it's like, I always ask players this question: are you willing to sacrifice the school that you get into academically to go play tennis somewhere that's willing to take you and maybe go to a school that wasn't your top choice? Do you value that college tennis experience so much that you're willing to sacrifice a little bit there, and what is that actually worth? So for me, I wasn't a good student. It just wasn't my thing. I just wasn't very book smart. I had my other things that I was good at. I'd rather go sell CDs on the side of the street and to my friends than I would study for an exam. I wanted to do business. I liked that. That was just my calling. I was an entrepreneur. I couldn't work for anybody. I was always thinking that way, and I always had a new business idea since a little kid. And so for me, going to college was all about the sports. It's the thing that drove me to to get a degree. And there's some kids that are the opposite of that. And they're like, I like tennis, but I'm not going to give up going to, Stanford because I want to go play tennis. But I think the only way you can make that decision is once you actually do the process and get educated and figure out if that's worth it. Can you go to Stanford, and is that undergrad or whatever that much better than going here? And then what is that tennis experience going to do for me? Like, I think and believe that sports experience is priceless. But it's everybody's decision to make how valuable that is to you guys and to the student. For me, sports is my life. If I didn't have tennis, I would have failed in school because that was what was keeping me interested. I loved everything about college tennis. The trips, the friends I made, going out and competing, getting fit, just being a better player, learning everything from there. That was what drove me to actually want to study. And there are kids in all the way from, like I said, academics is very important, and they want to play a little bit of tennis all the way down. And you're going to start to learn that. Your child's going to start to figure that out. But the only way to figure it out is actually doing the process, getting involved. So I think that's very, very important to understand. As it comes to the recruiting process, though, I designed personally like a 7-step little process that I figured would be the best way to explain to a family that, how you would go through it, navigate it. And the navigation is starting with getting evaluated, understanding, what your level is. And there's many ways to do that. One is to, be at these type of events and hear from the coaches and what types of schools might be interested in you, where you might fit, depending on how old you are. I mean, if you're a little younger, you might not be ready for that. But as you get a little bit older and you're in 10th grade, 11th grade, we can start to understand where you might end up. And then academically, how are you a student? If you're in 9th grade and you're getting, A's and a 3.5 GPA, I mean, likely those kids continue on that trend, Things can happen, but generally there's a certain trend. When you take the SAT, some kids take it in 10th or 11th grade the first time. They study a little bit or not at all, and they get a certain grade. And that's a benchmark because it's supposed to be an aptitude test. Not everybody does great, but generally you get a good idea of where you can be, and but with studying a little more, how much you can increase it by. And so after understanding where you might go and what your needs and wants are and evaluating that, you go through these steps that every college coach needs. And this comes back to the noise around. Everybody's got these, ways to tell you how to do it. There's really one way to do it. College coaches need a video. They need a match video. There's various, that might have a little variation, but if you look at anybody in the business who has the right knowledge, who's going to tell you about the video, they're going to give you certain things to do. And some may include additional few things, some may remove some things, but the core is going to be in there. Whether you talk to a college coach, someone like myself, or anyone else who has this expertise, right? And then when it comes to making a profile, this is where everyone goes wrong. You want to tell your life story. 1-page email, 2 pages, 3 pages. You think a college coach is reading that? You got to treat college coaches like a CEO of a business. They read headlines. They don't have that time and resources, as I mentioned to you guys, to do that. So they're going through it, and they are scanning it for the information they need. For them to evaluate somebody, they have in the beginning of the season or before the season starts, they say, all right, for the following year or 2 years, these are the players that we need, and these are the levels that we're looking for to replace these players, and these are the academic standards that we have at our school, minimum standards to even try to get a kid into our college to qualify, and then they go and try to look for those first, along with the level. And if you have a particular level that they see through video and statistics and results, and you have the academics and maybe even the financial standpoint, depending on the school, then they're going to say, all right, you go in this pile and we can start evaluating these players further. That's when you get your opportunity to tell more about yourself and your character and what you're about. But that's initially, you got to present that resume. And people are reluctant to present it because they don't feel like they have what it takes. But that comes back to the sort of straightforward, rational conversation is that, if you got it, you got it, and if you don't, you can't really fake it. You can't cheat it. Like, you're just prolonging what's actually going to happen. And if you give a college coach certain results early on, you can't be afraid to do that. No college coach is going to sit there and look at you as a 9th or 10th grader, whether at a camp or you sent an email, and like you have a certain resume that doesn't really map what they need right now, but then 2 years later you do have it, like you've increased, let's say, your certain grades, or you improved your game a certain level, and then they're gonna be, oh no, I already looked at that kid in 9th grade, now I'm not gonna look at them. There is no harm, there is only an advantage to be in front of coaches earlier on. Expose yourself. Doesn't matter if you're a 6 UTR now and then you turn out to be an 8 or 9. And that's what the coach wants. If you're that level, they will find you. You will reach out to them and they will be happy to talk to you if that's what they're looking for. Doesn't matter what you were last week, last year, whatever. It matters what you are at the time they need a player. And then you go through the building a list of schools, evaluating that. And there are certain things that you need to do. I've created a guide to do that. And if everybody follows everything from building a list that fits your financial situation, the major you want to study in school, if you have that figured out or not, then a variety, the locations, ideally, the level, all the needs and wants and actual your level compared to the colleges, and we match it up and you throw that out to colleges, you start the communication process. And when you start communicating with them, you start figuring out who's interested in you or not. Now that is a challenge though, you know? Do you have the time? Do you have the skills, communication skills? Coaches don't want to hear from the parents when it comes to that. You know, I think it's everybody's duty here to help guide your child to become way more independent and to help them think on their own. Because once you get to college, everyone who's been there realizes you're on your own. So there's no real mistake you can make. You know, you can't really say anything to a college coach unless you just like completely like tell them they're idiots. Like there's nothing you can, like coaches know that they're dealing with young student athletes who are also learning, and they're willing to, you know, guide them a little bit to see if they're a prospect and then ask them the questions and figure it out. So when you're going through it, you know, the communication is very important. But if you don't have the time, you don't have the skills, you don't really know how to do it, you haven't had a kid gone through it. I mean, there are resources and tools you can use, whether it's free online webinars to hiring some people that can help you, to using the tools that are available to help you navigate it. This is something that you guys should all be thinking about, what you need support in to help you do it. You guys are investing in something like this, for example, which should bring you a big return. Every one of your children should come back home saying, I learned a lot. There's no doubt they've learned a lot already. I've talked to a bunch myself. I do it every year. How can you not? You're on court with them. You're spending the whole day with them. You're going through everything from training and drills to college talks to playing matches and doing college-style drills. It's an experience. And so after the communication and all that, it comes to, if there's scholarships involved, negotiation stuff. And that's an art on its own. We all know that. If you're in business, negotiating, working with coaches, somebody wants a better deal at times. Sometimes it's a mutual understanding, but there's some art to that for sure. There's some insider knowledge, there's abilities to do it. And then it's finding out which schools are right for you and going through the visits and making sure you have the credentials and the test scores. And the problem is that not all of this happens completely in order, right? I wish it could be as simple as here it goes and go for it. But it's not. You know, I often tell my team that it's kind of like you're in a courtroom and you have a case in front of you, you know, and so you walk in and you say, all right, this is what we have in our hands, and this is what we're up against, and these are what we think coaches are going to say, and this is going to happen. You go up to the stand, and all of a sudden somebody throws a wrench, and things are said and done, and then you're having to think and figure out solutions and how you can navigate it and how you can work it out. And that's where it gets super confusing for a lot of families. And if you wait to the last minute, then you're in trouble. And you're losing opportunities. I wish that families would take this process like way more seriously from an early time, because then you can be well prepared. You can build a game plan, and you can try to execute and navigate along the way and adjust as needed. It's always going to be adjustments as you go along. But waiting to the end is only going to leave you thinking with regrets and what if and how does this work. And, coaches are recruiting faster and faster. This is a world where we have YouTube and emails to text messaging. Everything's instant. And things are happening way faster. Coaches are recruiting, putting players on their list early on, and they're following them and they're investing time. They're also, because they have that ability, who wouldn't want to take a kid that they can see over the next, or a bunch of kids over the next few years and spend time trying to learn more about them and watch them as they grow as junior tennis players and then select the ones they want. So why aren't we doing the same thing and going and building a big list and then narrowing it down, knowing that some will drop because you want to drop them, because they don't like you, and then finding your pathway. So, I didn't want this to be like a step-by-step learning process. Because this is the first conversation I think everybody needs to have and to understand. After that comes the things you can learn as we go along, and we can get into different discussions. That's where I've been putting more and more content. I'd love to get your guys' feedback after camp of what you guys want to learn more about, that we can create that content for you guys, and hopefully host a webinar in the near future that you guys can all attend, and we can have another conversation about certain intricate pieces on the process, because it's way more complicated in each section, and there's more to learn, and there's things that you must do. But if you do those things, and you can save yourself a lot of time and heartache and understand the process much better. So I want to leave the floor open. How much time do we have?
It's 5 to 7.
Okay, so 10, 15 minutes to take a few questions from you guys. Okay, go ahead.
To be clear about the videos,
Yeah.
so young player, 10th grade, take it upon him or herself, have a video made and send it to whatever coach that they might be interested, whatever college coach that might be interested in attending. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, so what I'm saying is that every division has different rules of when they can communicate with players, right? So that's one of the things that you guys can look online and find. Okay, different divisions have different rules of communication, when you can start that, when they can receive emails, when they can send you emails. And as it comes to the video, whatever those rules are, depending on the divisions that you're sending it to, is, look, this is how I feel about videos. I honestly feel that every player should be using a camera pole. Have you guys ever seen those camera poles, like the one back there that's being used? You can put it up on the top of a fence, and you should be recording your matches as often as possible. Because we have a video technology to be able to capture it so quickly, and just on a GoPro or whatever, you throw it on your computer, you can watch it, stream it live, and you can watch these matches and actually see how you're developing. All the pros do it, right? So why aren't we? And if you're doing that and you're getting good videos out of it, and you have a good match where you're playing someone competitive and you feel like this is a good display of my skills at my best, you can upload it online and you can send that to coaches. And they'll watch whatever they need to watch. Now, can you make it a little bit easier? Can you speed up the points in between, the delays, like use the speed up button? Some people can edit that out a little bit or cut it. Most of your children probably are good enough to use like iMovie and all this stuff anyways. Like even GoPros, like they have their own little software that everyone uses. You can use your iPhone and you can edit some little things. You give them a set, half a set, you give them speed up some stuff, show the score if you want. You can get as fancy as you want, but it's not necessary. Coaches will still watch it. They can still get an idea of your skills and your strokes. It's better than not seeing anything at all. And most coaches will want to come watch you play at some point if they feel like your tennis and your academics match up. Now, can you add some strokes and stuff in there? Absolutely. Doesn't hurt. Can you show some forehands, some backhands, some volleys so they can see your technique?
Like during a training session?
Sure, but you can add a few minutes of that. Got a handful of backhands, forehands, serves. They can see a few of those things, and then you want to show them real match play. Think about it this way. If you guys are watching tennis on TV and you watch the pros, or even college matches, how are you going to assess how good somebody is? Do you want to watch Serena Williams in training, or do you want to watch her play the final of the US Open against a really tough match? How are you going to best assess her level? In a real match. Multiple matches. When we see these players on TV very often, everybody has an analysis of some of these players, right? I'm sure a lot of people, if they're watching, who watch tennis, like maybe even you, like you probably tell me what you think of Federer and Nadal and Djokovic. And you have your own scouting report on them. And which guy you think would be the best if you had to recruit somebody for your team because of what you like or what you think they bring to the table. Ultimately, that would be the goal. Like if I was a player right now and I'd be recording all my matches, I'd be uploading all those things in, and like maybe a coach will watch a little bit of some of your big matches and they'll watch a few games of that, maybe a whole set. Maybe they won't, but some might. But you're displaying your best tennis because you're there in a real match setting against a real opponent that is making you play your best tennis and pushing you to your limits. That's the matches we love to see on TV as well. That's the way we can assess. We want to know how good Roger Federer is. Well, put him against Nadal and Djokovic, and you'll see the best Roger Federer most of the time. Next question?
Just a follow-up to your question. I
Sure.
was told that you cannot record some USTA matches. Is that true? Or you need to see
Well, look, I mean, that's
permission
some.
to ask the opponent?
Depends on the tournaments, depends on the opponents. You have to seek people's permission. A lot of people are changing things like that. So yeah, if they don't want you to do it, then you can't do it at those ones. But wherever you can do it. You can do it at training when you're playing a training match. I mean, that's the next best option. A lot of it's finding solutions, just by the way. Some of the stuff that I say, you have to try to find solutions too. If something that happens is not allowed in certain states or certain places or whatever, it's like, where can I actually apply this as best as possible? Is that fair enough? Yeah.
So what's the difference between this event and the showcase types of events?
Okay, good question. So she asked, what's the difference between showcases and exposure camps? Okay, I made a video on this recently, excuse me. So, okay, I run a showcase in November, so I actually do both, so I have firsthand knowledge. So showcases are typically designed for sophomores, juniors, seniors. A lot of people have now started opening showcases to freshmen as well. A little bit because Division I rules have changed in the recent years now to allow coaches to bring kids on official visits as early as junior year. So that accelerates the recruiting process to possibly do a little bit earlier. At the same time, I think it's just to get more players in the network and teach them, have them play in front of coaches a little bit more, get a little more comfortable, so that when you're a junior and senior, you're not all nervous and it's not your first day at the rodeo. But typically they're for those kids that are immediately getting recruited. And you come to those events and there may be a components of some Q&A sessions or coaches panels, depends on the event and how much education they want to provide. But the goal there is to come and play in competitive matches and have as many coaches as possible come out and scout you with your resume and start to see you play live. Again, the best way for a college coach with the limited resources we have in tennis to come out is to see a lot of players at one time. And the best thing for players is to do the same. So that's what they do. And that's what they're designed to do. And there are really good opportunities out of that. In our event in end of November, we got over 100 coaches. That's awesome. But the difference is that coaches can't be on court with you. They can't be training you. They're not going to be able to speak to you. They're not going to eat lunch with you. Those are events where only if you're a senior and depending on the year can they have a conversation with you. But it's still got a lot of merit to it. Here at the camps, it's development and understanding, education, and recruiting. It's hard to favor one over the other, but for the average player, especially if you're a younger kid starting, these can be a great opportunity. The thing that the showcases have is that they have a lot of coaches over there, so you're going to get firsthand eyes by a lot more people, but you're not going to get any direct access to these coaches to be with them. The coaches here are the counselors of the camp, right? So they're staffed. We staff them here. They're paid to be here to coach. But as a default, they also can recruit because they happen to be college coaches. So that's the unique experience. So both have their values that way. Does that make sense? Yeah.
So the summer before the senior year, is that too late to be doing these kinds of events?
Look, everyone heard that question, by the way? Okay. You know, nothing's changed in the last 10 plus years that I've been really in this business. Every year I go out and I tell people, and a lot of people say start early, and it never happens. So when you say, is it too late? It's a really interesting question for me to answer, because it's like, can I help you get recruited, or could you get recruited? Absolutely. But it's just you're definitely gonna have less options, like full transparency. Of course you're gonna have some less options. There are gonna be some schools that have already closed their doors. But is there still gonna be plenty? Are you still gonna have a good time? Are you still gonna find a great school and a good fit? Most probably. So if you're in that boat, it's not like it's panic mode, but you gotta work super fast. But if you're not in that mode and you think it's okay to be, that's also not good. Yeah.
Can you address recruiting for Div 3 specifically?
Recruiting for Div 3, yeah.
How that
Yeah.
differs from Div 1 in terms of the balance between student athleticism and academics.
Yeah. So when you have divisions 1, 2, and 3, it's interesting because you've got different levels of tennis in all those divisions. You have some Division 3 teams that could beat some Division 1 teams athletically, like tennis-wise, and vice versa, and all around. The process is different because you're talking about scholarship sports versus non-scholarship. In Division 3, there are no athletic scholarships, but there is financial aid, and there is academic scholarships. But there is often a higher academic, requirement. The process is very different because the emphasis on most Division 3s are academics first. Not that the coaches aren't competitive teams. It's just how their admission system works. There are some schools that have what they call slotted positions, and they'll be able to help you get into the school, and they've got those opportunities to get someone at a certain threshold and get them in the system. There are certain schools that in D3 that say, look, to the coach, like, we don't care if this kid's gonna be a stud for your team. They need this certain academic level, otherwise it's not a negotiation here. They gotta meet this, and that's that. And I think that's that's the general gist of it. Is there anything particular else that I can?
Yeah. So, for example, the example you gave before,
Yeah.
where the student that was homeschooled
Yeah.
had higher athleticism but lower academic rigor was chosen over the student who was higher academics but lower.
Higher academics in terms of the rating of the school. So let me clarify that. That student that was homeschooled had the same grades, had the same GPA as the kid that went to that private school that's known to be one of the top in the country. Okay? Tennis-wise, the homeschool kid was higher level than the player that was going to that higher academic school on paper. And so what happens is that, at certain schools, if the level is, let's just say, a 5-star or blue chip, and if you're a boy, it might be a 13 UTR or somewhere around there, and girl, so I'm just trying to give you guys a gauge, a 9, 10 UTR. Then like some of these schools, the coach will want to recruit that level player, and if you have the grades, whether it came from homeschool or it came from a certain, that school, in certain schools, as I'm saying, that didn't matter. Like at this school, it didn't matter. Penn said that I don't care if you go to homeschool or you went to the top school in America, you have the same grades, but this one's a better tennis player, and if the coach wants to recruit that player, then go for it. Because they're both gonna get it. And in some schools, that doesn't fly. But knowing what does and doesn't, or understanding that that may be the case, can't be your excuse or reason but there are kids that also go to like some of the top schools and play top level tennis. Like, I think that's also hard for a lot of families to understand. They're like, I want to go to Stanford. It's like, yeah, but you're not, playing those tournaments. You're not that level. Well, how can my kid do that when they're, studying all the time and it's so difficult? It's like, well, that kid, there's kids that can do that. So they're just at the next level. It's like watching LeBron James and being like, I want to be LeBron James. Well, he can do everything. A lot of guys want to, but they can't. There's a certain talent, there's a certain, genes and genetics. There's some things that aren't coachable or teachable, right? And it just is what it is. That's the kind of cool thing about sports, is you can work super hard and get to a certain level, and then there's an element of talent, a level of opportunity, a level of desire and hunger inside that really pushes the limit. I working with so many kids, like I can line up like 10 kids that I have worked with and stuff, and really just go down the list and go 10, meaning this kid does things that the next set of kids couldn't even imagine, and the kid who's the one down here would like fall off their chair if they thought they had to do that. They don't think they can do that, but it's possible. It's the expectations, it's the sacrifices, and some people just aren't willing to do that, and that's okay too. There's different types of people. And I think it's just about finding the right fit for your son or daughter based on their desire, their abilities, academically, athletically, and then your financial situation. And that there's a good school for everyone.
To leverage off of what her question was.
Yeah.
You're telling us to educate ourselves.
Sure.
And how can we find out about, for example, the D3 school that was in your example, what requirements that they're looking for, what is it, how many slots that they have? Because I've looked on some of the websites for athletics, and it's very general. It's not specific.
Right. So this is the well, that's the challenge, you see. Universities, again, transparency here. This is stuff you guys won't hear. This is stuff that's kind of frowned upon. But there are a lot of schools that don't want their coaches to disclose that information. There are a lot of coaches that don't want to disclose that for their own personal reasons, which you can understand. You don't want to lay all your cards out. You're also trying to get the best players and deal possible. It's a really interesting situation, right? Because like you got this whole thing where it's like the people want to get educated, and there's an element of you want the best for this kid because you want him to get a good education, but then you're also this college coach, and it's a business. And you're doing business with the little kid, and technically you're doing business with somebody's future. And that's an interesting little parallel, but that is how it works. And so what I'm trying to do is create more of that, those statistics for you guys as much as I can through my network, through my resources, and trying to get coaches and stuff to open up as much as they can about what's available so that they can find the right fit. The problem is that we have too many players that are going after those positions that they're not a right fit for, and trying, because then that creates more work for the coaches, or not necessarily more work, that's not the right word, but more people in that environment that it doesn't allow them to get to the players they need to get because they got limited resources. Sometimes when you open up the can of worms, it becomes difficult. But I am definitely trying to help you guys. Like, we have a recruiting app that gives a lot of information that I try to collect that can help you guys understand how many scholarships are available at certain schools, what roster openings coaches are willing to disclose, and who they're looking for. And then once you understand that and you're the right fit, then coaches will start to disclose to you at the right time how many slotted positions they might have, if that's available, or what their recruiting situation is like. Because now you're a prospect, a legitimate prospect, where they want to give you that information. Take one more question. Okay, two. Last two here. Yep.
Just out of curiosity, what kind of communication, what information have you guys and you and the coaches been giving to the
players
in the couple days?
In terms of tactics development?
Just about college.
Sure.
I'm just
Yeah.
curious to know what kind of conversation we're going to be prepared to have, or what information they're going to have had from the
Yeah.
coach.
Well, look, as I mentioned at the beginning, this is an opportunity for them to get started with understanding about the process stuff. The communication that coaches are having with the players on a development standpoint is giving them as many tips and advice about strategies, with their no one's changing a stroke in 3 days, right? We're talking about strategies. We're talking about character and body language and working on becoming a leader and encouraging teammates and ball placement and how that strategies all work together. And that's the development side. As far as the recruiting or the college side, it's talking about, this is what we do with our teams. These are our expectations. These are what these players do. This is how you can succeed. These are some of the experiences that we've had and how we've dealt with them. So we're trying to give them a little taste of everything, from development and just everything what it's like in college, from being a player to being off the court, academics, motivating them and helping them prepare and giving them a crash course so they can get kick-started and walk away from this motivated and learning a handful of things along the way that's specific to their college tennis in the future. One more back there? Yeah.
Yeah, I was curious, does each school look at international recruits very differently, or is there a uniform method?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, there's been discussions online that I've been involved with on social media channels that's, there's people can be a little bit upset about, internationals versus Americans, who's getting the opportunities. I mean, as I said, tennis is an international sport, but that question is very similar to hers. It varies from school to school, who's able to recruit internationals versus not. Most are, some can't, some will, some don't have the funding, why you might not see internationals on that team because maybe they don't have, the scholarships for them for particular reasons, or they don't offer athletic scholarships. A lot of internationals, just by general standpoint, are looking for that scholarship. Otherwise, some of them decide to stay at home. This is not their country, for example, so they value it differently. But everybody's case is a little different. Statistics-wise, there's really, other than seeing what players are on those teams, gives you maybe a little bit of an idea if they recruit internationals or not. But the standards of how the process works is a little bit different. You have to take some different tests, like the TOEFL exam, if you're not going to an English-speaking school. And there's certain things, but it's not very different. There's slight differences. And getting more specific statistics from those colleges and coaches is what I'm really working on, because it's not really out there for you to see black and white. So, that's one of the holes that I'm definitely noticing. All right. Listen, guys, I want to thank you all for coming, and I want you guys to know that, if you do have questions afterwards, we will look to set something up. I think a webinar would be great, and we can answer all these questions, get as many of you guys and maybe a lot of the parents who weren't able to make it, whose kids traveled alone, and throw your questions at us at Tennis at Collegiate Camps. You have Lee, mine, our assistants' information, and I hope this was a good educational piece for you guys, and we're looking forward to seeing you guys in the near future. So thank you.